As a real estate investor, how many deals have you worked on? Maybe you spent weeks or sometimes even months talking to the seller, trying to get things worked out. And at the end, you just couldn't pull it off and the thing went to the auction. And if you're like most investors at that point, you think, well, the deal's lost. There's nothing you can do. You just wasted a lot of time and just walked away. Well, our guest today is going to tell you how you can take these deals that seem like they're lost and actually still turn them into a profitable deal. So overages, that's what we're talking about today on the Sub2Deals show. Hey, Sub2ers, my name is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub2Deals show, where we talk about all things subject to and creative finance. Now, occasionally we will talk about some other real estate investing topics, but it's always something to help you with your real estate investing business. Today, we've got a great show. We've got overage expert Nick Fullmer here. He's going to talk to us about how you can actually make chicken salad out of chicken poop. In some cases, where you've worked on these deals for days, weeks, months, they go to the auction and we all cry, oh, boo-hoo, it got away. But there is a way, if you know how, that you can still come back and salvage that and still possibly make a 5-figure profit. So, Nick, welcome to the Sub2Deals show.
Thanks for having me, Willem. Happy to be here. Excited.
We're excited to talk to you. Nick's been on Goat Talk with us before, a great show, a lot of interaction from our people in the forum, and we wanted to have him back for the podcast to introduce him to some other folks. Nick is a resident of Utah, does deals all over the country with overages, been doing this for about 7 years. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick. Super interesting story, how you got started, like a lot of us, just sick and tired of being sick and tired. But you tell everybody how you got started in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2013, I got engaged to my now wife. And at the time I was working for the U.S. Forest Service, just a seasonal job. And when I got engaged, I was like, well, I guess I should get a real job. So I ended up becoming a corrections officer at the Utah State Prison. Started doing that, was working 12-hour graveyard shifts for $16 an hour. And quickly realized that's not what I wanted to do for the next 30 years of my life. So I started looking for a way out, literally how to get out of my job at the prison. So I heard somewhere that most millionaires are made in real estate. So I was like, okay, well, maybe that's the answer, and started going on YouTube, listening to real estate, reading books, started buying courses on real estate. And I actually started out my real estate journey doing wholesaling like a lot of people do. I did a couple deals that way. And then I learned about a strategy called tax sale overages. Ended up buying a course, went through the course, implemented what I learned, and did a few deals. And I was like, hey, I like this better than wholesaling, because instead of trying to ask the homeowner to give me their home at a discount, I'm like, hey, can I help you recover some money from your tax sale? So different mindset, different kind of an offer there. A little easier, a lot less competition at that time. And started doing that. And then fast forward 2017, my wife was like, you just need to just quit and see if you can start your own business. I was like, okay, I'll do that. Worst case scenario, I can always go back. There's always going to be a need for corrections officers because they have a lot of turnover, and they're always looking for people to work at the prison because people don't last a long time there.
Right.
So 2017, I quit my job and I attended a foreclosure auction. And what was interesting to me was this property sold for $30,000 more than the opening bid. And at that time, a light bulb went off because of my experience in tax sale overages. So I just went up to the auctioneer. I was like, hey, was the opening bid the amount owed? And he's like, yes. And I was like, well, what happens to that extra money? Because it sold for $30,000 more than what's owed to the bank. He's like, well, it should go back to the homeowner. I was like, okay, this is just like what I learned in tax sale overages. I wonder if I can apply the same concept to mortgage foreclosures. And asked him if he would help me. I started finding people, started going through, court records, looking for people that were owed money, contacting them, offering my services to help them. What I do is I hire an attorney, I pay all the costs, I do all the work to collect the overage, and then just take a percentage on the back end, take a commission. And did a few of those deals, and then fast forward to today, and now I've done deals in over 15 different states. I do both tax sale overages and mortgage overages. So I like to call them TOs and MOs, tax overages and mortgage overages. And and then I teach what I do, and that's what I'm doing today.
Yeah, you said something in the beginning of that at first there wasn't much competition. Isn't it funny? I know I learned how to invest, and after I was successful 2 or 3 years, had a lot of people asking me, well, how you do this, how you do that. We train our competition every day to go out and compete with us. But, it's funny. If you're still a player, if you still really get out there and do the stuff, there's plenty really for everybody. We say that, but it's the truth, because most people won't stick with it and just do stuff that needs to be done.
Yep. Yeah. That's so true. And it's really interesting. When I actually started teaching others, my own business got better because it forced me. Well, number one, I was getting more lead flow because sometimes I'll partner with my students on deals. Mm-hmm. But number two, it also forced me to learn, different areas that I had not worked in before, learn the laws, learn the procedures so that I could help my students. And it's exactly what you said. There is so much out there. There is so much work to handle that a one-man show like me with a very small team, we couldn't even make a dent in the amount of funds that are owed to people. So there really is a lot of opportunity for sure.
Right. I know several years ago when I first heard of overages, and I heard of it through people. There was one guy in particular that was in a mastermind that I was in that was doing some really, at the time was super creative. I think it's a little bit more mainstream now, but it was kind of like the Wild West back then. You could pretty much take whatever percentage of that you could get the homeowner to agree to, but it's becoming a little, like most things in real estate, becoming a little bit more regulated. So that's why it's so key that you talk to someone like Nick who knows these things. There are certain states that really limit what you can do as far as a percentage you can collect now.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely it's the concept of what I do is very simple, right? It's locating people that are owed money from their tax sale or foreclosure and offering to help them recover that. But I always say it's simple, but the execution is difficult.
Right.
And that's because every state has different laws. Every state has different rules and regulations. And so you really do just need to, what I recommend people is focus in on one market, like one state when you're just getting started. Learn the procedures, learn the laws, get some deals under your belt, and then start to branch out from there. But yeah, it's definitely really key to educate yourself on the laws and the procedures in whatever market you're working in.
Right. Okay. Well, let's get going. For a lot of people listening to this, they may have never heard of overages or surplus funds. Tell us, what are overages or surplus funds?
Yeah. So I'll kind of briefly explain. I'm sure everyone is familiar with tax sale or foreclosure. If you're not, a tax sale is just when somebody loses their home because they didn't pay their property taxes. Foreclosure is just when someone loses their home because they didn't pay their bank, they didn't pay their mortgage. What's interesting about both of those is before the bank or the county, takes that property back, they will put it up at an auction and let members of the public bid on the property. And so what happens is, investors like us, real estate investors, we go to these auctions because we want to get a good deal, and we bid on these properties. But what happens is the competition causes, the bidding to go up. And especially in today's market, we live in the market right now is just crazy. The demand for housing is insane. And so these investors not often, like I won't say a majority, but a lot of times these properties will actually sell at auction for more than what's owed to the bank or the county. Okay. So a quick example, if I own a home and I owe the bank $100,000 and it goes to a foreclosure auction, and let's say an investor purchases it for $150,000. Well, by law, the bank's going to take what's owed to them, $100,000, which then leaves $50,000 left over. And that's what we refer to as an overage. Other people refer to it as a surplus of funds or excess proceeds, lots of different names. But that is the overage. And that overage is created from the competitive bidding of investors at tax sale auctions and foreclosure auctions. So does that make sense? I don't know if that was
Absolutely. Yeah.
a decent explanation.
Well, and I would guess that I haven't been to any foreclosure auctions in a while. Well, first of all, there haven't been that many, but I've worked remote for the last 11 years. But so I'm not local where I used to go to those things every month because, I mean, not only are you looking, even if you're not looking at properties, there's a lot of contacts to be made there, the foreclosure attorneys. You can learn so much just by hanging out with these guys.
Yes.
But I'm guessing that the ones that do make it to the auction right now get bid up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not only that, like what's interesting too, especially just within the last couple months, is a lot of those foreclosure moratoriums are being lifted. And so we're seeing a high increase in foreclosure sales. And depending on the market too, a lot of these properties are getting bid up like a lot because you have two factors coming in. The first factor is we've experienced a lot of appreciation in a lot of markets. And so when a property does go to auction, sometimes it has a substantial amount of equity.
Right.
And that equity will then transfer to an overage. And because of the demand too, these investors are paying so much for these properties. I don't even know how they make a profit sometimes. Right. And so, yeah, we're seeing it's not uncommon in some markets for a homeowner to lose their home and have a 5 or a 6-figure overage waiting for them.
Right. I know we mentioned earlier why this is so important because a lot of investors don't know about it, don't know that there's something after the auction. But I would say the fact that we're in real estate means we're more likely to know, but almost no homeowner knows about that. They think when their house goes to the auction, it's gone. Everything is lost. And in my experience, the county doesn't work very hard to let them know that there's something waiting on them. And there's a reason for that, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%. So what you said is exactly right. Homeowners, they have this mindset that, there's nothing for me. I lost my home to an auction. There's nothing there, which is not true. By law, the bank's going to take only what's owed to them. And if there is an overage, it should go back to the homeowner. Now, what you said too, the counties or the banks, they don't work very hard to notify them. They will send out a notice. But here's what they do. They usually send out a letter to the last known address of the homeowner, which is usually the property address they got foreclosed on. And they send it weeks after the sale. And by that time, the homeowner's gone.
Right.
So they never get the notice. And what's interesting too is that in some states, if a homeowner doesn't come forward to claim that money then is what's called escheated to the state or the county, meaning it's forfeit. It goes to the county or whoever, and they can use that money for their own purposes. So you can kind of see right there, there's a conflict of interest, right? There's not really any reason for the county or the bank to really fine the homeowner, because if the homeowner doesn't come through, that money becomes property of the county.
Exactly.
And so they send out a letter to the foreclosed property and they say, hey, we did our best, we tried, and they call it good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for that reason, again, it's important that you know someone or have someone like Nick who knows these things. I try to encourage my students all the time to dig a little deeper than the real estate course they bought, learn the elite things, the behind the scenes sort of things. And because that's where you make the big money in real estate, learning how to buy partial interest in real estate, the difficult stuff, the hard stuff. Because I know getting started, so much stuff is public record. You can walk into the courthouse and demand to see all kinds of things, but that doesn't mean they're going to make it easy for you to get access. You need to know what you're talking about when you walk in there. And a box of donuts doesn't hurt anything either. Make it nice with those ladies behind the counter at the records room or the eviction court and whatever. It's funny how stuff like that works for sure.
Yeah, so 100%. That's so true.
So tell us, I know we're touching on a lot of this stuff now. It's just, I love things like this, what I call the subterranean sort of market. But why it's so important for all real estate investors, especially the ones that operate in distressed property, auction type property, things that are going to the courthouse, whether it's tax, foreclosure by the bank, whatever, why it's so important for them to understand about overages and incorporate that into their business.
Yeah. If you're a real estate investor and you target tax delinquent properties or pre-foreclosure properties, it's important because it gives you a competitive advantage. And what do I mean by that? Like William said in the beginning, you may work on a deal for months or weeks or whatever, and then that deal goes to the auction for whatever reason you couldn't put it together. Well, that doesn't mean you still can't profit from that deal, and you still can't help that homeowner. And when you have that knowledge, when you know how to help that person, well, that now gives you, number one, it gives you the ability to provide an extra service that most people are not even aware of. And number two, you now know that, hey, even if I can't put this deal together, if I lose it and my competition buys it at the auction, I could profit off my competition purchasing this property at the auction. And that's why it's so important, is it gives you that competitive advantage and also that extra income stream, because you've already put in the work. The hardest part is actually making contact with the homeowner and establishing that relationship. And so if you already have that relationship because you've talked to them before the auction, well, you now have a higher level of trust with that person. If William's working a deal and can't put it together and it goes to the auction, and then there's an overage, and then I reach out to that person and say, hey, there's an overage, but then William also has that pre-existing relationship. Who is that homeowner more likely to choose in this situation to do business with? Are they going to choose to do business with William, who they already know and have talked to multiple times? Or are they going to choose me, who just reached out to them out of the blue? In this scenario, William has the advantage, because he's put in that work. He's built that relationship already. So that's why it's super important to know about this strategy, to know how to execute it, so that you create that additional income stream in your real estate business, and you profit from your competition.
Exactly. When I remember the first time I talked to you, I've got all these scenarios going through my mind. Okay, this is how the average foreclosure investor, whatever, you're massaging that deal, you're trying to make it work. It doesn't work. It goes to the auction. Immediately, you find out what that overage was. You contact the homeowner. Hey, Joe, so sorry, we couldn't make this work. The house went to the auction, but I may be able to recover some of your equity. Would that interest you if I can get you a check? And there you go. You're off. You're making some money off that deal. So that's great. Hey, listen, guys, our episode today is sponsored by Big Insurance. Okay. Corey and Jason in Birmingham, they can insure your property all across the country. Give those guys a look, check them out. We're going to give them a little spot here real quick, and we'll be back in just a second. Birmingham Insurance Group is a full-service property and casualty insurance agency laser-focused on risk management solutions in the single-family residential space. Their master policy program is available in all 50 states and was designed by investors for investors. It provides tailored coverage and competitive premiums, specially for real estate investors, owners, and property managers. Give Jason or Corey a call today at 205-682-8856 or visit them at their website, bhaminsgroup.com. That's BHAMINSGROUP.com. Hey guys, we're back with Nick Fullmer. Nick is an overage expert, and he's just really sharing some tips with us today on how you can have an add-on to your real estate investing business that's very profitable and can actually make money off of deals that you may feel were lost. So tell us now, okay, we know how overages work. We know what they are. What's the overage market really like? I mean, how much can an investor expect to make if they go out there and they hustle and they do this business?
Yeah, great question. So I actually made a video about this the other day, kind of going over, showing some leads that my team has tracked in the last couple of weeks. I think I showed maybe 20 different counties. And between those 20 counties in one week, those 20 counties had generated about $6 million in overages. Now, you know, there's 3,300 counties, I think, in the entire US. So you can do the math on that and, you know, figure out what the total market may be for overages. What's interesting too is that $6 million was only for mortgage overages. That wasn't counting tax sales either. So yeah, it's like I said, there's plenty to go around for everyone. As far as how much one can make, that's a great question. You know, I'll be honest, you know, you're probably not going to make huge money. You know, it's not like a 6-figure flip deal or, you know, I'll be honest, my highest profit that I've ever done was around $30,000 on a single deal. I'd say the average is around 5 or 10, but it can range anywhere. So as far as your percentage goes, what I have found for me personally, my average commission is around 30%. So that means if I help someone recover, you know, $50,000, and if I charge 30%, well, that's what, 15,000, right?
Right.
And then what I like to do, some people don't do this, but what I like to do is I like to cover all the expenses out of my portion. So out of that, I may have, you know, $1,000 to $2,000 in expenses, such as attorney fees or paying a virtual assistant. So on that type of deal, if I recover 50, I charge 30. So my gross is 15, but I'll probably net around 13 after I pay all my expenses.
Right. Now, I know as an investor who buys and sells houses remotely, we have to have several team members in every location that can take care of things for us, anything from taking photos and video of the house to meeting potential buyers, walking them through, getting a contract, getting the paperwork signed, someone that can process their application. Let's say that I decide I want to add overages to my business and I want to operate in 3 or 4 different states. How many people, what kind of team do I have to have in each location?
That's an awesome question. So I'll tell you my setup right now is there's me and a virtual assistant that tracks foreclosures and tax sales. So she does like all my lead gen. She creates lists of leads, does skip tracing, all that good stuff. And then in each state that I operate in, I have one attorney, you know, maybe 2 if I want to back up, but usually 1 is sufficient. And that's it. You need 1 attorney in whatever market you're working in that's licensed in the state where the overage is located. And that's pretty much it. And so
Is that one attorney per state, or like, let's say
Yes.
that I'm in, okay, so if I'm in, say, Sacramento, and if one end of the state to the other, Los Angeles, whatever it may be, I don't need two, just one can handle it for me.
Yeah. Most attorneys can do one and they can handle the whole state.
Right.
There may be some if here's a good thing too about the pandemic too, is like it changed a lot of things. And so now attorneys aren't having to go in person to court anymore. They get to go, via Zoom and sit in their
Right.
law office and just have hearings via Zoom. So we're in this situation now where it's like, if you've got one good one, usually that can cover the entire state for you.
Right. Because I know the buying remotely and doing business regular real estate, you got to have several people. It doesn't matter if I'm buying in two cities in one state, I've got to have the same team in each city. They're not going to drive across the country to take pictures of a house or do whatever. So that sounds like a really simple business. One attorney in the whole state, and then a VA that can be anywhere helping you just with spreadsheets, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
It's very lean. I don't like to have a lot of overhead. So, my costs are obviously my VA. That's pretty regular.
Mm-hmm.
And I always recommend, like, use a good attorney. I mean, there's some states where you can file claims on your own. I do not recommend that because here's the reason why. Number one, you don't want to do it wrong. You want to make sure you're doing everything properly. And number two, you're actually wasting time. An attorney for me is an investment, not an expense, because while the attorney's doing all the paperwork and stuff, I'm out getting more deals. So that's why I highly recommend people find an attorney to work with so that you know that you're doing it right. It saves you time. And here's the other thing, guys, like, whenever I say this, there's always the thought like, oh, well, that sounds expensive. Attorneys are expensive. I agree. But here's the other thing. Some attorneys actually are used to getting paid when the deal pays. Just because you hire an attorney doesn't mean you need to pay them anything up front. You can always negotiate with an attorney to work on contingency, meaning they take their fee when you get paid. And so that's a way to control your expenses, control your costs, and not have to come out of pocket for a bunch of attorney retainer fees, if that makes sense.
Well, it sounds like the fees that you would have are pretty minimal anyway. If on a $15,000 profit, you're looking at a couple of grand to get it all handled by someone else. I mean, that sounds like money well spent.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny. Like, I actually, because I've done so many, I actually prefer to pay an attorney their hourly rate and not give them a contingency. Because there's three ways to pay attorneys. Number one is hourly. Number two is a flat rate. And number three is contingency, meaning they get a percentage of the deal on the back end. Most of my attorneys, if they work at contingency, they're going to want like 10% of the deal, like 10% of the gross overage amount. So if it's a $50,000 deal, they may want $5,000 on the back end. Or, I can negotiate maybe a flat rate of $1,000 to $2,000. My favorite ones are like, hey, yeah, I'll, pay me my hourly. And if they charge me $250 an hour, I know on a straightforward deal, because I've done so many, it should take them about 4 hours of work to get the deal done. So $250 times 4, $1,000. So I'll pay $1,000 to get $13,000 back all day long.
Oh yeah. How many times would you do that? For sure.
Yeah.
So on the subject of attorneys, if I'm looking for an attorney, let's just say that I look at the states, I find the one that I feel like is the most favorable, and I want to go after deals in this state. What would be the process, the best practice to find an attorney to handle these things for me?
Yeah, great question. So you can use the bar association for that state to find specific attorneys. There's also a website. I'll give you guys a golden nugget here. There's a website called avvo.com, avvo.com. And that's just like a directory of attorneys. You can search it by state. And what I like to do is I like to search by a type of attorney. Foreclosure defense attorneys seem to be kind of the best ones to go after because they're familiar with foreclosure. So they should, be able to be familiar with the process. I'll be honest, guys, finding an attorney is tough because this is so niche. There's even not a lot of attorneys that know about this. So it can be hard to find an attorney, but it's a numbers game. You just have to reach out to a lot of them. And what I do is I'll just type up like a very short message like, hey, I'm looking for an attorney to assist me with a case recovering surplus funds from a foreclosure sale. Would you be interested, or do you know anyone that could help me with this? And I'll take that message, and using ovo.com, you can email them right there, and I'll copy and paste that, and I'll basically send that same message to 20 or 30 attorneys to find one. So,
bam, now that's a pro tip right there.
Yep.
For sure. It sounds like pretty much everything else in our business, Nick, that we know more about real estate. For example, most investors that are active investors know more about real estate than some real estate attorneys, than some real estate agents. I remember the first, you go to people when you get started, and I learned about real estate investing, bought a few houses, learned about land trusts, and decided these are great. I want to use these. And so who did I ask first? The attorney that closed when I bought my personal residence when I wasn't an investor. So I went in, met with him, sat down in his office and said, hey, Tim, I'm going to start buying real estate. I want to use land trust to hold title. And I explained to him what it was. And he sat there, he's a young guy, he sat there and he said, gee, William, I went to school for a long time and spent a lot of money to become a lawyer. I don't want to lose my law license doing this shady stuff. We're talking about property holding trust, right? And this guy thinks that I'm some kind of crook. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's there's a lot of them out there. And that's not their niche. They don't operate in that space, and I get it, but sounds like it's the same thing there. And you'll run into some attorneys too, with some of the things we do, they just don't want to be associated with something that they feel like is ugly in some way, that takes advantage of people or could be construed that way. They don't want to have anything to do with it. I know when I lived in Georgia in Bibb County, they would not do tax sale auctions during an election year. How about that?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. They told me at the courthouse, there's no tax auctions because I asked about them when I learned about them. Well, we're not having any this year. This is an election year. We'll wait on our money. Well, they know it's not. I mean, they're going to get it next year.
Yep.
So
that's funny.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the general process? Just, the Cliff's notes on the general process of recovering an overage. Let's say I worked on this deal. We couldn't make it happen. The homeowner just wouldn't sign off on things. Delay. We got it taken care of. Last minute, they call us up. Too late. Goes to auction. Sells for $50,000 more than the bank's money. So what happens?
Yeah. So the process from there, if you've already established a relationship and there's an overage, you've already done, the first 3 of the 5 steps. So there's 5 steps. I call it the overage profitability formula. C4 plus P. You create leads, you conduct research, contact the claimant, contract, and then profit, which is basically submit your claim. So if you've already done the first 3, because you already know the homeowner, you're already in contact with them, the next step would be to contract. Basically, you get a fee agreement signed saying, hey, I'm going to do this work for you in exchange for my work. I'm going to get this percentage. You're going to get this percentage. Sign that. There may be a couple other documents your attorney may want to have a separate agreement between them and the client, or with you and the attorney. It varies a little bit, but usually across the board, I always get a fee agreement signed, just spelling out like, what are my duties, what are my responsibilities, and what percentage split have we agreed to. You always want to have that signed. And then when you have all your documents, you're going to hand that off to your attorney, who's then going to file the proper paperwork with either, wherever the funds are being held, whether it's the court or the county, or in some states it may be the state. It just varies state by state. And then from that moment, once you've got everything filed, it's kind of a waiting game. One of the cons of this business is it's not quick money. It's not like it's not like wholesaling where I can maybe go get a contract and then sell it in a week or whatever. Once you file a claim, you're probably going to be waiting 3 to 4 months. Now, I've seen it as little as 30 to 60 days. That's rare, but I've seen it. Average is 3 to 4 months. Sometimes it could be longer if you're dealing with like probate issues, like you're helping some heirs. But 3 to 4 months seems to be the average from when you file your claim to when you get your check. So that's kind of a bummer, right? Like it's not, why is that? Like, why does it take so long? Well, government, man. It's right. Like they work on their own timeline. The courts work on their own timeline. It's not a fast timeline.
Right.
It is what it is. It's mostly just a waiting game. And, but then once it gets approved, then you get the check, and then either you'll get the check directly, or the best way I like it is when they send the check to the attorney, and then the attorney sends you your portion and then sends the client their portion. That's my preferred method to have everything paid out. And then at that point, man, then you celebrate, take some of your profits, reinvest it into your business, make sure you get a testimonial with your client, or a review, do a Zoom video with them. So you have a video review and then go get the next one.
Oh yeah. So what is the actual involvement from the homeowner? I mean, once you get a contract with them, are they harassed constantly? Do they have to provide this, provide that? Because a lot of times that is a problem in making a deal. They don't want, and tracking them down and having to, they're like, what else do I have to do? And those things. So is the contract about it, or is the county going to contact them? And how does that work?
Yeah. So usually once you have the contract, they may want maybe a copy of their photo ID just to prove that they are who they are, or you could just get it notarized. That could overcome that issue. But really it's just, as long as what you just want to, when you file a claim, just put yourself in the county shoes or the court and just say, if I'm the county, what are they going to want to know that this person's entitled to the money? So like if I'm dealing with heirs, then I want to prove their relationship with the homeowner, that they're entitled to that money. So that, if it's a spouse, hey, can you give us a copy of your marriage license? If it's a child of a deceased homeowner, hey, can you give us a copy of your birth certificate?
Right.
And then other than that, man, that's pretty much it. Like you send them the paperwork. If you don't need anything notarized, you can use DocuSign, which is really fast. Or, you can send them a mobile notary to make it easy. Right. What I like to do is like I say, hey, take this to your local bank. They'll notarize it. They should do it for free. And then I include like a prepaid postage so that they can just throw it in there, throw it in the mail, and they're done.
Right.
So it may take 10 to 30 minutes of the client's time to get some paperwork signed, notarized, and throw it in the mail. And then that should be all their involvement at that point.
Well, it sounds like that again is another good reason to use an attorney, because the county's probably less, they're going to scrutinize things less if they're being contacted by Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, as opposed to you, who they don't know or know in a limited capacity. I know when I got access to the records room 24 hours a day, the qualification was that I had to be a county resident and I had to have 2 referral letters from local attorneys. So they trust those guys.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah. Using that, plus the attorney probably knows, if they're experienced with this at all, what documentation to get up front. So that probably saves you some time on that. So
yeah, it definitely gives you a level of credibility.
Yeah.
Both with the county and also with the homeowner too. Like we let them know, hey, we use an attorney for our deals.
Right.
So that can give them some peace of mind that you're not just some fly by the night person trying to, file paperwork and get money or whatever. It's everything's done properly and legally. So
right. So you mentioned the lengthy process, 3 to 4 months. Have you seen that? Has that changed as a result of COVID? Has that timeline gotten longer, or is it pretty much that way all the time, COVID or no COVID?
We did see an increase earlier this year. That it was taking a little longer, depending on the state we were working in. Sometimes 3 to 4 months turned into 5 or 6. But now things are starting to open up again. Those are going back. Timelines are going back to normal. So yeah, to answer your question, we did see some increase, but now it seems that that's kind of, since things are starting to open up again, people are going back to normal. So
All right. Well, this is great, Nick. I mean, I remember, like I said, talking to you again today when I had you on Go Talk, and I was like, man, I'm wound up about overages, and so I got to start looking at this again. So, where can people contact you? How can they find you to learn more about your program and that sort of thing? Yeah.
So I've got a website called Overage Syndicate. It's SYNDICATE, overagesyndicate.com. And then I've got a YouTube channel, same name, or you can just Google my name, Nick Fullmer, Overage Syndicate, YouTube. So the website kind of goes through the entire process. And then obviously there's an opportunity to work with me at the end. And then I've got a lot of free content on my YouTube channel as well. And try to provide value and show that this is legit, this is real. And, we do a lot of case studies. Should do a lot of interviews with my successful students and just answer a lot of frequently asked questions as well. Like, kind of what we covered today.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, give us, that's a great idea. Can you give us a recent case study of some stuff you had closed recently?
Yeah, absolutely. What's the latest one? This one's pretty recent. I need to update. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up I have a little PowerPoint where I try to keep track of all my deals.
Sure.
Yeah, this one was a little one. This one was this is you said you're from Georgia, right, William?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So this was one we did a couple months ago. September is when we got paid. This was actually a deal out of Georgia. Mortgage overage. So this was a foreclosure.
Right.
Really nice house, actually. You guys probably can't see it, but if you were looking at it, it's a nice 2-story, probably 4-bedroom house out in Georgia. And we recovered $21,000 for this lady. So not a huge recovery.
Right.
And then after attorney fees and everything like that, our net profit was $6,500 on that deal.
Right.
We filed that. Let me actually, I'll give you all, let me tell you when we filed it and when we got paid. So the check is from September 3rd of this year. And then we had filed it in August.
Oh, that's pretty quick.
So that one actually was faster than normal. We probably got everything signed, end of July, but then we got everything to our attorney in August and then got paid in September. So that one actually was really fast.
Right.
But, they're not all like that.
Yeah.
So
probably the bigger the check, the longer they take, probably. That county hates to give that money up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and we had a couple. We had another one out of Ohio. We had several out of Ohio last month, and then also recently just did one out of Texas. It just got paid out. I actually am just filed my first case in the state of Kentucky. So that was kind of wild. And then we have another one in Mississippi, and I've never done deals in Kentucky or Mississippi. So those are two firsts for me. And that's the nice thing about, with Mo's and tows. With tows, in some states, there's not tax overages. And that's because of the way that they do their tax sales. Like some states, because of their process, it doesn't generate tax. Like bid down states where they just, instead of bidding down, bidding for a deed, they're actually bidding down the interest. Like how little are you willing to earn on this tax lien? So that doesn't really generate overages. In some states, if overages are generated from tax sales, there are some states where the counties actually get to keep the overage. States like Minnesota, Wisconsin, which is crazy in my mind, but there was actually recently, Michigan used to be one of those states, but there was a recent case last year out of the state Supreme Court in Michigan where they overturned that. So prior to last year, if someone had money available from a tax sale, the county got to keep it. They got to keep any profit on the deal.
So those are the same states, though, that when it goes to a tax sale, the house is lost. It's not like, I know in some states when there's a tax sale, like go back to Georgia, for example, I used to have a buddy that bought as many of them as he could because the return, whether they paid it off within the year or whether they paid it off 5 minutes after the sale, was still 20%. It was incredible. So if you paid $5,000, you got $6,000 back if they walked up to you before you left the courthouse steps.
So
100%.
And that's kind of that's where a lot of confusion comes into play is, every state has different tax sales procedures. So you got to know what the tax sales to kind of understand. But the other thing I wanted to get to is for mortgage overages, though, if there's foreclosures in a state and it sells for more than what's owed to the bank, there's an overage there. And so I don't know of any states where you can't collect mortgage overages. So that's the nice thing about mortgage overages. You can do them in all 50 states. Tax overages, there's maybe 10 states that they may not have tax sale overages, but you can still do mortgage overages. So
and correct me if I'm wrong here, but tax overages are where all the states have different little laws and things, but mortgages are pretty much the same state.
Yeah.
There's some variance, but it's not as significant as tax.
Because I think that's worth talking about. With foreclosures, there's two methods of foreclosures, right? There's judicial and non-judicial. And so you just got to ask yourself, and you use Google for this, right? Alabama, what foreclosure process do they use? And you just see, is it non-judicial or is it judicial? And so that if you know the process of those, then you can pretty much figure out where the money's going to be and where to locate it. And if there's overages. With tax sales, it's different, right? Because there's 3 different methods to doing tax sales. You can sell tax liens, you can sell tax deeds, or you can do redeemable deeds. And then within those 3 methods, there's also different methods of bidding. Like, hey, you can bid down the interest, or you can bid for the deed, or you can, round robin bid. There's all this different stuff for tax sales. It can be very confusing, but foreclosures are a little more straightforward. It's like, does it go through the court or does it not go through the court? Non-judicial. Okay, it goes through a trustee, meaning it's a law firm. So, but you just got to know those different nuances and the differences between them.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the space where most investors are going to be operating in anyways, foreclosures. I know there are investors that go after tax sales and things like that, but I think the bulk of them are talking to distressed people trying to take, especially our listeners who like to take over payments. on properties
Yeah.
and things like that. So, yeah. So, but you contact most of your deals are people that you didn't contact prior. The sale's already complete. You're doing the research. So you don't have that built-in relationship. You're contacting these guys out of the blue and saying, hey, there's money here for you. Can I help you get it?
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so let me make sure we got this right. Our listeners can contact you at overagesyndicate.com.
Yep.
And they can also find you on YouTube with the same channel name, Overage Syndicate. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Nick, for being here, man. We appreciate it. Ton of good information. You guys get out there and start doing a little bit of research. Contact Nick and let him teach you how to do this stuff. And okay, guys, we teach as well. If you want to learn how to get the deed and be a Sub2 deed grabber, you can join us at Sub2DealsCoach.com. Our Sub2 Max premium coaching program is where we do it. We've taken dozens of total newbies and turned them into deed grabbing machines. So join us there. And also don't forget to check out Jason and Corey at Big Insurance. If you insure anything, if you've got rental properties, if you do rehabs, if you do subject twos, it's hard to find an insurance agent that understands how it works. And these guys know. They know how it works. They can do it for you. Like I said, it doesn't matter. Forced place insurance, rehab property insurance, they can do it all, and they can help you with that. So, Nick, again, thanks so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate you and appreciate your information. And hopefully some of these guys will reach out to you and learn more about what you do. So, guys, that's it for this episode of the Sub2Deals show. We appreciate you joining us. Check us out on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.